Man, it took quite a while to get episode 17 of Summertime Rendering. It seems like sometimes you just kind of don't miss those old days of fan subs and having to rely on somebody that's obviously doing things for free, and you have to get what you get. But yeah, finally watched episode 17 of Summertime Rendering. Really a lot of emphasis put on Ushio being something special. I've been trying to theorize for quite a while now to try to figure out what Ushio is, and it seems like there's all but confirmed at this point that she's a part of Heine, which is kind of interesting, which was revealed right at the very beginning. We have this whole scene with Ushio and Nagamo's taking a shower. She comes and says, "I seen you from 14 years ago. Something came to me. Man, you're stacked now. Can I touch it?" But no, this cuts quickly to a serious note, which is what happened to Heine? What changed her? What made her go from this sweet thing that you were spending time with to being what she is now? Which it seems like Nagamo, in a sense, kind of regrets it, like regrets getting involved with Heine, obviously because she lost Ryunosuke, but at the same time, that feeling of that curiosity, it's almost like she's blaming herself, which I don't really necessarily agree with, but yeah, technically Ryunosuke wouldn't have been out there if it weren't for her being there with Heine. But yeah, from this, Ushio reveals, I think I was a part of Heine. I don't know how she figured this out, but yes, this whole point in which Heine freaks out and her eye pops out of its socket, it seems to be implying that that's Ushio. That shadow right there created Ushio. Now, here's the question mark that I have. This thing that came from Heine, this eyeball that kind of shifted away, is it implying that this eyeball then snapshotted Ushio and created the shadow Ushio? Or did it form into the shadow Ushio? Is this thing actually physically her? Which I would assume that's the case because she does have Heine's eye, which she was able to pass off to Shinpei. And it still really begs the question of, if this is the point in which we're confirming that yes, she indeed is this eye, does she has the eye, how did Shinpei get it? Yes, we have this whole scene where she's giving it to Shinpei at the very beginning of the series, but it makes you wonder if Shinpei is from another timeline where she did give him the eye and maybe erased his memories. We're starting to get in the idea that maybe possibly way off in the future, the shadow Ushio is about to pass away, and she gives Shinpei the eye and sends him back to this current time to handle the situation. Because she only has one eye, so how is that in his possession is the big question mark. The only way to explain it is that if he got it in the future and brought it back, that would allow there to be, technically at this point, 3 eyes. This cuts to a scene with Mio and Shadow Mio talking, and this is the point in which Shadow Mio is really trying to press on the Mio, you need to do something. Like, she again understands how Mio feels and really thinks that the real Mio needs to take action. If she cares about Shinpei so much, take action. And she understands that Mio herself hates herself, believes that she's ugly, she's hairy. That's an odd point to make. And at this point claims that she's technically the real shadow of Ushio, which is not, I don't think she's meaning literally, she's meaning figuratively. Like, you're always standing behind Ushio. You're always trying to mimic her. You're trying to be as great as her, and you'll never be as great as her. Even your grades and your personality are all terrible. Reveal your feelings as Shinpei. Or she technically says, I'll do it. This is where we get an interesting scene with Tokako and Shinpei at a kitchen, and Shinpei's having an issue with seeing their father as a bad person. This is somebody that was trying to technically protect his family. But despite the fact that Shinpei can't find a reason to not like this guy, she's like, this is a guy that's complacent with the idea of creating this genocide just to create the revival ritual. But then she tells him that, you're not looking very good. You need to get some sleep. And this is a very curious moment because it's sort of insinuating that he himself physically is becoming tired from the many resets. Like, it's implying that these resets are all the same in his physical nature at the moment. Like, he's getting tired because he hasn't slept through all these resets, and which is kind of an odd statement to make, but either way, he has bags, so he's gonna go get some sleep. Technically, he's been up for a couple days at this point in this reset, so I guess it makes sense. This is where we get the big reveal from Nezu. Nezu wakes up in the middle of the night and goes to sneak out to go to his house. Ushio's like, I told you guys to let me know if you need to use the restroom. Apparently, Ushio has been guarding everybody, which is kind of funny because Nezu says, no, I need you to let me go. I need to go home. And so she's like, okay, well, if I can go with you, you can go. Which is like, then who's going to protect everybody? But I don't know. But Nezu heads back to his house. That's when we would kind of find out that, yes, his wife is actually a shadow, and he's got her pinned up against a wall with 3 shots. And he reveals that 2 months ago, his wife went out to the farm, apparently was killed by a shadow, and she came back as a shadow, at which point he pretty much was able to pin her down. Now, it's interesting because he says that when she came into the house, she flashed him. And the way that it was translated was basically that it all came back to me the moment that it flashed me, and I realized that I was already made a copy of, and I couldn't be copied again. Now, it seems like right here they're trying to show the reveal that once you've been copied once, you can't be copied again. But it also kind of implies that he's forgotten what happened, and it wasn't until he got flashed again that he remembered. So I don't know if maybe way back here when he was first attacked along with Nagamo, if his memories was wiped, if he hit his head and thus he forgot everything, or if somebody after that fight erased his memories. But again, it seems like it's implying that it all came back to him at that point. I'm kind of assuming that was meaning that he recalled that, and thus it made him realize. But yeah, it was really sad because it kind of implies here that despite the fact that he's been on this revenge streak, like this happened to my wife, I went out and I wanted to destroy all the shadows, I forgot that the main one was back at my house. Like he finally was able to essentially give up this copy. That he was hesitant to take out this copy because yes, it still was technically his wife, but now he's finally, I guess, gotten the resolve that I finally need to put away technically the biggest enemy that I have. Like I've been fighting all these shadows, but this is the one that killed my wife, and I've been letting it sit here this entire time. It's time to finally let go of my wife, at the same time take out the thing that is at the core of my hatred, which I thought was a really cool way of taking it from just being a typical, I couldn't do it because it looks like my wife, to something a lot more meaningful for him. Following this, we get a brief scene with Shide and Negoro, and Negoro has been kind of patching up their hand that got harmed, and at this point kind of shows what I guess is the reason why this thing has such a large mass. It ends up consuming Negoro, like pulls their entire shadow self into its hand to recover it up. So kind of right here implying that the reason why it has such a large mass is that it's consuming so many other shadows. Following this is kind of something that I did not like, honestly. We cut to Shinpei waking up the next morning and he's all feeling refreshed, and he realized at this point that the time that he has been increased, which didn't make any sense to me. Like, I don't know if it's implying the idea that because he's gone on so long without dying, he's been able to get away from that edge again, or if it's just the fact that he slept allowed him to rest and get more, I guess, concentration. It can go either way. It didn't really explain it very much. He just goes, oh yes, the edge has gone further away. I have more leeway with the number of loops that I have. It's like, well, okay, so is it, again, implying the idea that because he's rested, he's more concentrated, he's able to have more gap? Or again, if because time has passed, he's been able to, speed up. Because he's been resetting so much, he got closer and closer to the edge, but now that he's taken some time before the reset, it's been able to build its gap. It's kind of what I'm assuming there. But still, he says that the pain in the back of his eye is getting worse. He's getting more of a headache, which I'm guessing is the eye that is Heine's eye. Is it because it's burning because it's getting so close to the festival, or is it because something else has happened? This is where everybody kind of splits up to kind of get an idea of where the rest of the shadows are. They obviously have the festivals coming up, and they need to hunt down as many of these shadows as possible to prevent this harvest from happening. And this is funny because Mio comes up to Ushio and's like, here, I got you some of your hair. I found it throughout the house. I figured you can use the original Ushio's hair to recover yourself. These are from her body. Like, I was just like, these are like potions for you. And she's like, oh, cool. So I'm thinking that's pretty cool. So like if she gets shot in the arm, she could throw a hair on there and it will restore that data and close up the wound. No, she uses it to recover her, which let's be perfectly about it. As much as I laughed at that whole thing, it makes sense. Because now, because yes, she's not recovering like wounds that are bleeding out. She's just recovering her hair to make herself look better. Well, yes, technically, if you think about it, her having longer hair allows her to whip it at things, and what she's been basically doing. So, yes, technically, her weapon is her hair, so the longer it is, the better. It was still kind of dorky. Plus, they had this whole goofy magical girl transformation to make sure it restores. So yeah, everybody separates and investigates all the different people that are noted as possibly being shadows. One specifically one that they note is Buchi, which is their old teacher. Apparently, Nagamo at the funeral noted that that was one of the shadows. So they went to her place, noted that there's actually a spot for her, went out to try to find her. We end up finding her along with two kids, about to attack a bunch of other kids. So Ushio knocks out the two kids and Shinpei shoots the teacher. And we get a little brief kind of flashback of Buchi and what she kind of meant for Ushio and Shinpei. Like, she was a really nice teacher. She kind of looked out for them. We get a little brief shot of Ushio being bullied by some other kids before she turns around and beats the crap out of him. At which point, Buchi kind of pushes upon Ushio, like, your hands are meant to be comforting. They're meant to hold people. They're meant to hold hands. They're not meant to harm other people. And to think before you act. But no, the interesting thing that came from this whole scene, and I think that a lot of people have probably been waiting for this moment, is that the show technically finally acknowledged that Ushio has blonde hair. Like, we haven't been noting this entire time. Like, who is Ushio? Why does she have blonde hair? It's kind of one of those difficult things in anime, honestly. It's like, technically, yes, anime and manga and all that loves to make characters with so many weird different types of hair color. I mean, Tokiko has like some sort of darkish red, and you have Tetsu has this flaming red. You kind of assume that it's just for making characters look unique, but you always wonder if eventually they're gonna go, yeah, there's a story reason behind that. Typically, blonde is always a foreigner, so it kind of assumes that Ushio is not necessarily from Mio's family, but maybe she just dyes her hair a lot. Maybe she's been dyeing her hair ever since she was a kid. Or I don't know, maybe Ushio's dad got with somebody else for a brief moment. But I don't know, we'll see if it ends up actually turning into a story beat. I mean, at least the kids finally acknowledged it. Somebody acknowledged the fact that she's got blonde hair. But no, obviously one very important thing happens in the scene as well, and that's that Ushio, they find some blood. Ushio examines it, finds that it's some random tourist that's in the area that's being consumed, and Ushio starts talking weird. And I think this is where we're going to finally start to get the idea that, along with what they mentioned at the very beginning of this episode, that Ushio is part Heine. So, or at least the Shadow Ushio. The Shadow Ushio is part Heine. Because now she's starting to talk in a way that's very different from our typical Ushio. And even still, at the end of what she says, she goes, wait, did I say something? As Shinpei's asking her what she's talking about. As they're talking about this idea that Heine is trying to consume a lot of these different people, she says, Heine is a fool. She'll never heal by eating others. Shiori Kobayakawa and Heine, they no longer exist. Their original bodies are gone. Which this has me thinking. The one thing that we note of Heine is that she's very weak. She can't even stand on her own. And it's implying that she's trying to heal up her body by consuming shadows, which, yes, what have we noted that beyond this point? Every time Ushio, the Shadow Ushio, gets harmed, she can never heal herself. She's always bleeding out, and she can't stop it. She can try to close it, but it keeps bleeding out. The only way that she can heal herself was by consuming something of the original. So what she's implying here is that Heine, who's injured and destroyed, and her face is all scarred up, and she can't stand, and maybe that's why she's doing all this stuff, is she's trying to repair her body, and she can't. And I think the only way that maybe she can get away from it is just by having this harvest festival so that she can just basically consume everything. Which makes me believe that if the whole reason for the harvest festival is just so that Heine can do what she thinks she needs to do in order to repair herself, it's not gonna work. But no, very, very interesting. Again, this entire episode is basically Nezu's reveal and Ushio technically being a part of Heine at this point. We've pretty much all but confirmed it at that point. But no, as everybody comes back together, that's the point in which they kind of gather all the information for each person, talking about how these shadows they're seeing stains, but they're not seeing where the shadows are. They've fled. They're kind of coming to assumption here at this point that everybody has left messages for people so they don't look for them, and is claiming that they went on vacation somewhere, and that all these shadows essentially are trying to hide right now. They're all trying to hide because they're afraid of Ushio coming and disconnecting them from Mother, and they're all going to be needed for this big festival, which leads Shinpei to pretty much the last option that he has. In order to successfully prevent this festival, he needs to talk to Katakiri. Now, I don't know if that means that he thinks that Katakiri is somehow connected to it, or that Katakiri can call it off. Obviously, he's at the Hiroko Shrine. He would be the one that would be holding the festival. If he can tell Katakiri, hey, don't do the festival, maybe he can shut it down. I don't think that's going to happen. Again, this entire time has believed that Katakiri is going to be... I thought Katakiri was Shide. So I still believe at this point that Katakiri is going to be somehow tied in with Heine in some way. We'll have to wait and see. Hopefully it shocks me and doesn't have that be the case. You never know. But now it gets a little bit into Shinpei's head about, this was the first place I tried to go to. This is where it all started. The first time he reset, he was going to there, and he got chased down by the Shadow Mio, and Shadow Mio took him out. But yeah, Katakiri says, yeah, well, let's go inside, let's talk. That's where it leaves it. Sucky. Like, finally, we're going to possibly get something out of Katakiri, and it just cuts it off. So I'll be very curious to see how they play that out. I think that Shinpei had Ushio with him, so he's got protection, but it's gonna be curious to see who Katakiri is and what his involvement's gonna be, or if he's just a bystander. But that's all next week. Well, technically in like 4 days. Hopefully the next release for the next episode will be quicker. So that way I technically only have like a couple days to work before the next episode comes out. That's the only good thing about having a delayed release. But anyways, that's my thoughts on episode 17 of Summertime Rendering. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, make sure to hit that like button down below. Comment, let me know what you thought of this episode and what your current theories are. And again, if you've read the manga, no, don't reply. No comment, though. Additionally, if you have not already, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you get all my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you want to support the channel more, I would greatly appreciate if you consider supporting us through Patreon, our tips link, or super thanks button down below. Anything you can give is greatly appreciated, and y'all take care.